In the stillness of the morning, a tiger does not roar. It watches, it waits, it prepares. For many years, the world looked away, distracted by noise, blinded by dominance, believing that power wears only a Western face. But while they were busy arguing, India was awakening, not loud, not arrogant, focused, disciplined, relentless. Today, we do not speak of a rising India. We speak of an India that has arrived, a nation rooted in 5 zeros, 0 years of wisdom, now mastering the tools of the future. While others debated, India innovated. While others hesitated, India accelerated. The world is only waking up now, but India is already at the finish line, waiting for them to catch up. This is not a prophecy. This is not a warning. This is reality. Welcome to the new chapter. India's rise was silent, but strategic. In the shadows of global headlines dominated by superpowers, India chose not to shout, but to act. While many nations focused on projecting strength through spectacle, India built quietly, brick by brick, idea by idea, generation by generation. It invested in its people, its industries, its digital infrastructure, and its spiritual foundation. It didn't wait for validation from the West. It didn't seek applause. It stayed rooted in its identity, but agile in its strategy. The world, too busy measuring power in terms of weapons and wars, overlooked the power of resilience, discipline, and population potential that India harnessed daily. The foundation of this strategic rise began with a shift in mindset. No longer seeing itself as a developing underdog or a colony of the past, India began reprogramming how it thought about itself. Its youth didn't wait for opportunities, they created them. Across small towns and bustling cities, a culture of entrepreneurship started taking shape. With mobile phones in hand and internet access expanding even in the remotest villages, India connected its billion-plus people in ways few believed possible. While some countries saw technology as luxury, India used it as necessity, a bridge between poverty and progress. Education reforms were not just about classrooms, but about empowering minds to think beyond textbooks. A new generation of engineers, coders, doctors, and innovators emerged not from elite backgrounds, but from the middle class and rural heartlands. They understood the value of each chance they got. They knew that their success would not just uplift themselves, but carry the weight of their families and communities. This sense of collective purpose became India's silent engine. Meanwhile, India's approach to global positioning was subtle. It didn't try to challenge global giants directly, but made itself indispensable. It became the pharmacy of the world, the IT back office, the satellite launchpad, the voice of the global South. It built relationships across continents, balancing diplomacy with strength. India's presence in international organizations became more confident, not confrontational. It was no longer a follower, it began shaping the conversation. Economically, the world failed to notice the scale at which India was preparing. While others relied on imports, India strengthened domestic manufacturing. While some debated climate policies, India became a leader in solar power and renewable energy transitions. Its digital economy exploded, making mobile payments and e-governance a daily reality for millions. UPI Unified Payments Interface became a world case study. Startups were not just ideas, they were national assets. India produced unicorns at a pace that signaled its arrival in the innovation race. Culturally, India never needed to imitate the West. Its music, cinema, spirituality, and festivals carried global resonance. Yoga and Ayurveda didn't just travel the world, they transformed lifestyles globally. India didn't export just products, it exported peace, wellness, and identity. The world saw it as tradition, rich, but failed to realize how fiercely future it had become, and all of this happened without needing domination. It happened with patience and precision. No dramatic revolutions, no loud declarations, just progress consistent, compounding, and unstoppable. India's strategy was not to compete loudly, but to outperform quietly. It chose data over drama, delivery over delay. While global media focused on the loudest countries, India was becoming the most capable. It focused not just on being powerful, but on being necessary. By the time the world noticed, it was not about India catching up. It was about others falling behind. The West underestimated India's potential. For decades, global powers viewed India through a narrow, outdated lens, one shaped by poverty, overpopulation, and bureaucratic sluggishness. They saw images of slums and chaos, not of innovation hubs and rising billion-dollar companies. They measured strength by military might and consumer markets, not by the potential of one. 4 billion minds aligned toward advancement. India wasn't taken seriously. It was often seen as a support system, good for outsourcing, cheap labor, and spiritual retreats, but never as a global leader. This miscalculation became one of the West's most critical strategic oversights in the 21st century. The narrative around India was shaped by bias. Global media often painted India as chaotic, behind the curve, or always on the edge of crisis. It focused on shortcomings, while ignoring how rapidly India was transforming beneath the surface. Western policymakers and corporations made decisions based on yesterday's India, not realizing that a new, fiercely capable India was emerging silently but forcefully. They failed to see how demographic power, combined with digital innovation and cultural pride, was turning India into a self-sustaining giant. The West believed that real innovation and influence only emerged from Silicon Valley, from European think tanks or elite universities. They overlooked the quiet revolution of Indian engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, and creators who were not just building businesses. They were rewriting global standards. Indian talent had already become the backbone of the world's most powerful tech companies, yet their homeland was still dismissed as peripheral. Even as Indian-origin CEO began running major Western corporations, India itself was seen more as a supplier than a leader. The irony was profound yet unnoticed. When India launched its own digital infrastructure revolution, the West saw it as a domestic experiment, not a global game changer. When India sent a mission to Mars for a fraction of NASA's budget, it was treated as a novelty, not a sign of aerospace leadership. When Indian startups began disrupting sectors like fintech, education, and health, the scale was underestimated. While Western economies struggled with bureaucracy and stagnation, India was using its scale and urgency to leapfrog traditional systems. But because India didn't advertise its power loudly, the West failed to see its momentum. This underestimation extended into geopolitics as well. India was seen as a swing vote, not a voice. Western alliances viewed it as a useful counterweight to China, but not as a sovereign force with its own agenda. They expected alignment without earning respect. They underestimated India's diplomatic independence, its ability to say no, to walk alone if needed. India didn't seek validation. It acted in its own interest, knowing that real strength doesn't come from being invited to the table. It comes from building your own table and making others come to you. Culturally, the West misunderstood India's strength. They saw it as fragmented, divided by language, religion, and region. They did not realize that this diversity was not a weakness. It was India's greatest asset. A civilization trained in complexity, in adapting to contradiction, in surviving invasion and colonization, had developed a resilience that few nations could match. The West measured unity in sameness. India practiced unity in difference. That made its rise even more powerful, because it wasn't built on uniformity, but on collective identity. By the time global analysts started recalibrating their view of India, much of the transformation had already occurred. The West was slow to change its perspective, and that slowness cost it influence, partnerships, and relevance in the New World Order. While they waited for proof, India was already producing results. While they debated possibilities, India was delivering outcomes, and when they finally turned their attention to India's rise, they were no longer watching a potential ally. They were witnessing a global leader taking its seat unapologetically. Technology, talent, and tradition became India's pillars. While many countries leaned on one strength to build their future, India fused its ancient roots with modern ambition in a way that was both deliberate and transformative. It didn't abandon its identity to adopt progress. Instead, it evolved by integrating the wisdom of its past with the tools of its future. In a world rushing toward artificial intelligence, digital currencies, and automation, India found its own rhythm, one that balanced speed with substance and innovation with integrity. This triad, technology, talent, and tradition, didn't just support India's rise, it defined it. India's technological revolution didn't begin in labs but in living rooms, in crowded marketplaces, and on dusty roads. With smartphones in hand and affordable internet spreading across the nation, India created the largest connected population on Earth. But this wasn't just about access, it was about application. From digital payments in roadside tea stalls to farmers accessing weather updates in real time, technology began transforming the daily lives of ordinary Indians. The country's digital public infrastructure became the envy of the world. Systems like Aadhaar and UPI weren't just technical successes, they were democratic in spirit, offering empowerment at scale to hundreds of millions. India didn't chase the Western model of innovation. It built a system that worked for its own complexity. This technological foundation was powered by talent, an asset that India has cultivated relentlessly over decades. The Indian education system, despite its flaws, has produced generations of thinkers, builders, and leaders. What makes Indian talent unique is not just intelligence, it's adaptability. Trained to navigate scarcity and diversity from a young age, Indian minds bring resilience and creativity into every domain. From Silicon Valley CEO to AI researchers, from startup founders to social innovators, Indian professionals have shown they don't just perform, they lead. But what was once an export of talent is now a national resource. India is no longer just sending its brightest abroad, it's keeping them home, building ecosystems where ideas can flourish within its borders. Cities like Bengaluru, Hyderabad, and Pune have emerged as innovation capitals, rivaling their Western counterparts not just in skill, but in vision. Yet what truly distinguishes India's rise is that it hasn't required the sacrifice of tradition. In fact, tradition has been one of its guiding forces. In an age where modernity often demands conformity, India has chosen continuity. The values passed down through centuries of family, discipline, service, and spiritual inquiry have remained intact even as the nation built satellites, AI models, and billion-dollar companies. Ancient practices like yoga and meditation are now global wellness standards. Ayurveda is becoming part of modern health conversations. Indian festivals, music, literature, and cinema continue to influence cultures far beyond its borders. This cultural confidence has been India's quiet power. It allows the country to innovate without losing its soul, to grow without forgetting where it came from. The balance of this trinity, technology to move forward, talent to build smartly, and tradition to stay grounded, has created a blueprint for sustainable leadership in a chaotic world. Where other nations struggle with identity crises amid progress, India's identity becomes clearer with each milestone it reaches. It proves that development doesn't have to come at the cost of heritage, that modern success can emerge from ancient values. This is not just India's strategy, it is its philosophy, A civilization that reveres its past, believes in its people, and commits to shaping the future is not just rising, it is becoming unshakable. Global leadership is shifting towards the East. For centuries, power was centered in the hands of a few Western nations that shaped global policy, trade, technology, and culture according to their priorities. Their dominance was taken for granted, their systems seen as the gold standard, their voices considered the final authority. But change, though slow and quiet at first, has become unmistakable. The balance of influence is moving. Economic powerhouses, population giants, and innovation leaders are no longer confined to North America or Europe. The East, particularly nations like India, is not just participating in the global narrative, it is now helping to write it. This shift isn't happening because the West is weakening. It's happening because the East is strengthening. India's rise isn't about replacing anyone. It's about balancing a world that has long been tilted in one direction. For decades, global institutions were structured with little representation from countries that held vast populations and emerging economies. But now that imbalance is being corrected. India's growing voice in the G20, its leadership in the Global South, and its ability to mediate and cooperate across ideological divides all point to a country that understands diplomacy as deeply as it understands development. The sheer scale of the East, both in population and market potential, makes it impossible to ignore. India alone accounts for nearly 1/6 of humanity. This isn't just a statistic, it's a signal. With a youthful, aspirational population, India is becoming the driver of global demand, the hub of production, and the engine of innovation. As the Western world faces aging populations and economic slowdowns, countries like India offer growth, labor, and a vision rooted in sustainability and inclusivity. This demographic edge is not temporary, it is long-term and strategic, giving India and other Eastern nations the ability to shape the future economy, not just participate in it. Culturally, the influence of the East is also becoming more prominent. Bollywood films now stream worldwide. Indian cuisine, yoga, and literature are embraced across continents. Spiritual philosophies that originated thousands of years ago are guiding conversations about mindfulness, well-being, and balanced living in high-stress global cities. But this cultural expansion isn't a soft distraction from hard power, it complements it. It shows that influence isn't always about control. Sometimes it's about attraction. The East is earning global attention not by shouting louder, but by offering something deeper, meaning, tradition, and a vision of collective growth. Technologically, Eastern countries are no longer playing catch-up. They are building new paths. India's leadership in digital infrastructure, space technology, and software services is already being studied by nations seeking to replicate its success. While the West debates regulatory frameworks and legacy systems, India experiments, implements, and scales. It has shown that leapfrogging outdated models is not only possible but necessary. The East is not looking to copy the West, it is creating a parallel model of progress that blends efficiency with equity, speed with stability. In geopolitical terms, the shift is creating a new world order, one that is multipolar rather than dominated by one or two powers. India's strategic partnerships with the United States, Russia, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia are not signs of confusion. They are signs of confidence. India is no longer choosing sides. It is choosing what aligns with its interests, values, and long-term vision. That independence, that clarity, is what marks a true leader. As Eastern nations rise, they bring with them histories of endurance, philosophies of harmony, and strategies forged in resilience. The leadership emerging from the East is not a reaction to the West. It is a reflection of readiness.